Aside from the voting public, the president desperately needs to win support from his fellow elected Democrats. Tomorrow's interview and a live event in Wisconsin could help or hurt, depending on how things go. Right now, only 2 Democratic congressmen have called for him to step aside. CNN's Sunlen Serfati is here in the studio with us. And Sunlen, what are you hearing from Democrats who've spoken to President Biden?
Well, some Boris are expressing their concern directly to the president. There was a meeting at the White House last night with about 20 Democratic governors, some who were in person, some virtually. And we heard from some of those governors saying they spoke up in that meeting and took their concerns directly to the president. Maine Governor Janet Mills, she told CNN that she told the president that she's hearing from some of the voters in her state some anxiety about, in her words, his difficult to watch debate performance and anxiety whether he could win or not. And in that meeting, we're told, according to sources, that Biden, pushed back and reiterated his determination here to defeat Trump. And there was a small group of Democratic governors who came to the stakeout position at the White House driveway afterwards, and they really echoed the same line and showed a supportive vote of confidence for the president.
I'm here to tell you today, President Joe Biden is in it to win it. And all of us said we pledged our support to him because the stakes could not be higher.
None of us are denying Thursday night was a bad performance. It was a bad hit, if you will, on that. But it doesn't impact what I believe he's delivering.
And the president is our nominee. The president is our party leader. And the president has told us, and he was very clear back there, that he is in this to win this.
And on Capitol Hill, we are certainly hearing publicly and privately a lot more concerns. Boris, as you mentioned, 2 sitting members of Congress, Democrats, have called for Biden to step aside. And they did convene this conference call last night with top Democratic leaders and some of the top members of the House. And many members told Hakeem Jeffries, the top Democrat in the House, look, he has to step aside. We want him to go. Now, we're told, according to sources, that Jeffries did not reveal how he's thinking. He, of course, has so much sway in what happens here. They are all seem to be giving it a beat, see how Friday's interview goes, see how that lands, and then they will be all back in Washington on Monday of next week.
Yeah, and at least for now, publicly trying to present a united front. Sunlen Serfati, thanks so much for the reporting. Let's discuss now with Democratic Congressman Jared Huffman of California. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and happy 4th of July. You said soon after the debate that Democrats have to be laser focused on winning and not hand-wringing or sentimentality. Do you believe that President Biden still gives your party the best shot to win in November?
I don't know, Boris, but here's what I do know. The guy you showed a few minutes ago, Donald Trump, is a fundamental threat to democracy, to our fundamental rights, and to the free world. Joe Biden is not. But I do know that we're also not on a winning trajectory, and I think we've got to be honest about that. So we need a reset. We need a course correction. We've got to acknowledge that this was not just one bad night. This is a pretty pervasive and widespread perception that's been dragging President Biden down in the polls for many months. So we've got to figure this out. I think we have a couple of weeks to do it, but we've got to do it.
So, Congressman, what does that course correction that you're describing look like?
Well, it's a great question, and that's what many of us are struggling with. But I think we have to remember that this is a winnable campaign. 2 weeks from today, the Republican Party is going to nominate a convicted felon, an adjudicated sex predator, a guy that wants to be a dictator, a guy who's deeply unpopular. I think certainly right after they finish that spectacle, we need to have our ticket finalized so we can go out and win this election.
When it comes to your description, quote, many of us struggling, it seems like behind closed doors, as we've heard in CNN's reporting, there is anxiety and there is, as some have described it, panic. But publicly, as we just heard in Sunlen's reporting, it seems that Democrats want to present the idea that this was just one bad incident. Do you think that as a party, there's not yet been an acknowledgement, as you made a moment ago, that this wasn't an episode, that this is a string of lapses that has been reported on for months now?
I think there are different perspectives on that, Boris, to be perfectly honest. Some people want to write this off as, one bad night. They want to insult the critics, call them bedwetters, et cetera. I don't think that's helpful. I think we've got to take a very sober look at the reality of the race as it currently stands. And it wasn't just one bad night. It was a bad night that may have locked in a really unfortunate narrative about President Biden's age and fitness. And that narrative could be very hard to undo. So we've just got to be honest about that. We're 4 months before the election, and the guy who's threatening our democracy, our fundamental rights, and the free world right now is winning. We got to fix that.
It may be hard to undo that narrative, but do you see a way for President Biden, perhaps through these interviews or standing in front of a crowd of reporters without a teleprompter answering questions, do you see a way for him to regain the confidence of your party and its voters?
Well, Boris, there's not a lot of time, and that narrative is, pretty established now. It wasn't just one debate, and so it's going to be very difficult for this president to undo it. And I will say this, my colleague Jim Clyburn said something very important. If President Biden decides that in the interests of defeating Donald Trump and saving this democracy and the free world from everything he represents, that he is ready to pass the torch, it needs to be, and I think should be, Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket. And I can imagine any number of really compelling people that could round out a winning ticket with Vice President Harris, a ticket that would bring all kinds of enthusiasm and excitement to this race and put us in a position to win it.
That is significant that you would support the Vice President stepping in for President Biden should he decide to step aside. He obviously hasn't done that, and we have reporting from inside his camp that his family is encouraging him to stay in the race. Some of his most trusted allies are doing the same. What would be your message to those folks that have the president's ear about perhaps persuading him in a direction that, as you see it, would be better for the party and for the country?
Yeah, none of us want to be in a position of appearing to, try to pressure Joe Biden or push him out. We love this guy. This guy is a hero in my eyes and pretty much all of my colleagues for saving us from Donald Trump in 2020, for being a great transformative president that delivered amazing results. I think my message for anyone right now who's struggling with this is to just step back and make a fully informed decision. This should not be about sentimentality. It should not be about, perceptions of loyalty or whatever to one person. It's so much bigger than that. The stakes of this, are everything when we think about our democracy, our fundamental rights, and the free world. So we've got to detach ourselves for a minute and really take a sober look at where the race currently stands and what's the best way to win it.
How much time do you think President Biden has before ultimately making a decision?
Well, sooner is better, obviously. Now, I will say this. We probably don't talk enough about timing. The Republicans in a few days are going to begin their convention. I talked about the spectacle of literally nominating a convicted felon. We probably don't want to finalize our ticket if that's where we are and give them a week of prime time to beat the heck out of it. I think it would be far better to make our decision right after their spectacle and then come together and go win this election.
Congressman, if President Biden stays in the race and if Republicans take back the White House, take back the Senate, and keep the House, what do you think Joe Biden's legacy will look like?
I don't want to speculate about that because I think we still have time to put this thing on a winning course. There's every reason to believe that we can beat Donald Trump if we make a smart course correction right now. But I think Joe Biden has an amazing legacy. He saved us from Trump in 2020. He delivered the goods as a transformative president. If he decides that now is the time to pass the torch in the interest of everything that he's done and everything we care about, I will consider him a hero once again.
It seems like you're being very careful with your words, Congressman. Respectfully, you're talking about a course correction and doing the smart thing. Just explicitly, in your mind, does that mean that President Biden steps aside as the nominee of the party?
I'm not ready to make that definitive statement, Boris, and nor do I think that right now is the time to do it. There could be a developing consensus along those lines, but at the end of the day, the decision is President Biden's, and all we can do is try to, constructively share our thoughts and do what we can to put us on a path to win, because that's what matters.
Congressman Jared Huffman, we appreciate you sharing your perspective with us. I hope you get to enjoy a happy 4th with some barbecue, some hot dogs and burgers maybe.
You too, Boris. Thanks so much.